Session 4 of Sunday School Stories. This time it's Daniel in the lion's den. Now this story has the background that in the 500s BC, the people of Israel were taken into captivity in Babylon, and Daniel was one of the ones who was taken. And King Nebuchadnezzar wanted to get the best and the brightest of the young men of Israel and to train them up in Babylonian ways and the Babylonian language so they could serve at the king's palace. Daniel was one of the ones chosen, and he was given the name of Belteshazzar. We're told that God gave 4 of these young men, including Daniel, knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature and learning, and that Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. So when their period of learning was up, the king called them in to question them and see how well they had learned, and it says in Daniel 1:19, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters in his whole kingdom. And so they entered the king's service. Now King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that really troubled him, and he called his wise men and advisors and said, "Tell me what I've dreamt and what it means." And of course no one could. No one was able to tell him what he'd dreamed. And so the king got angry and he said, "All right, then all the wise men in the country are to be executed." When Daniel heard this, he went to the king and he asked for time to tell him the dream. And the time that he was given, he went back and he asked his fellow Israelites, "We will pray for God's mercy." And during the night, God revealed to Daniel what the dream was and what it meant. And so he went to the king and he told him no wise man could possibly know what your dream was, but God alone knew. And so Daniel told the king what he had dreamt and what it meant. And the king's response is this. This is Daniel 2:47. "Surely your God is the God of all gods and the Lord of kings and a revealer of mysteries, for you were able to reveal this mystery." And so the king then made Daniel ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and he was in charge of all the other wise men. After some time, that king died and the Persians took over, and Darius became the king. And he appointed rulers over the kingdom, and Daniel was one of those. But Daniel distinguished himself so much that Darius decided to put him in charge of the whole kingdom. Now this roused jealousy in the other leaders. They began to plot Daniel's downfall. So they went to the king and they buttered him up, how great he was. And they said, "We want you to pass a decree that for the next 30 days, anyone who prays to a god or a human being other than you, mighty king, should be put in the lion's den." Now Daniel heard about this and he was greatly troubled, but he never stopped praying faithfully. 3 times a day he would pray to God to have mercy on them. But the men who were plotting were spying on him. And so they saw him praying and they went to the king and they told him that Daniel had been praying to his God. One of the laws of Persia was that any decree that was made could never be revoked. So the king was very upset because he was very fond of Daniel. He really respected him. He did all he could to save Daniel, but in the end he couldn't, and Daniel was taken and put in the den of lions. And the king said to him as he was put in, "May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you." A stone was then placed over the entrance and it was sealed with the king's seal. It says the king went home, he didn't eat, he didn't sleep, and at first light the next morning he raced to the den where the lions were. And as he did, he called out, "Daniel, has God been able to rescue you?" Daniel answered, "Indeed, that God had shut the mouths of the lions." So Daniel was released, and the men who'd plotted his downfall were put in the den, and the lions attacked and killed. The result was then that Darius issued another decree, and that was that in every part of Persia, people were to fear and reverence the God of Daniel. Daniel had stayed faithful, he'd stayed prayerful through everything that came against him.
He will never fail. He is almighty. have I always said,